Hey, Rest Friends, what's up? My name is Iridian Fierro, and welcome to a new episode of our interview series where we feature wrestlers that we think that you need to know. On this episode, we are getting a whole lotta dude, and I'm so excited. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Crash Jaxon.
Dragging Bishop out to the middle. It is Jaxon going for DVD!
In here with the moniker A Whole Lotta Dude. Oh, look, he's going to fly ball.
He takes to the air.
What? There we go. We'll get it.
Take flight. Oh, Crash cuts him off.
Crash, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for asking. And I'm super excited to talk to you because I feel like there's going to be a lot of chisme. Do you know what chisme means, Crash?
Chisme?
Yes, chisme. It's like gossip, like good stories, like the really, really good stuff. That's chisme.
Oh, gotcha.
So we're going to have a lot of that on this episode. I'm really excited. But I want to start off with a story time about a poster that I saw at All Out. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but at All Out, my friends and I were at the show, and near the ring on the floor, there was a giant poster, and the poster said, "Sign Crash Jaxon." And me and Lo, we freaked out. We're like, oh my God, we have to take a picture of this and send it to Crash. This is amazing. How does it feel to know that you have fans that are literally at wrestling shows having signs that say, "Sign Crash Jaxon"?
It's pretty, like, it's awesome, honestly. Just know that, like, I have impacted people in such a way that they're like pushing for me to get a job at a TV company. So that's like really awesome. And it's super humbling too, just because I didn't think I would get to where I am in wrestling right now. And I'm like not really anywhere, but I'm way farther than what I thought I would be from whenever I first started.
That's amazing. And it wasn't like the first sign that we saw that weekend. So there was a couple shows where this fan or a lot of other fans, who knows, it might have been more than one, had a sign that said "Sign Crash Jaxon." So we were excited for you, and we're hoping too one day, who knows, Crash Jackson's going to be out here on your television.
Fingers crossed, that's all we can do. I just got to keep doing what I'm doing, and then hopefully the right set of eyes see me like, you know what? This guy should have a job with us.
Okay, so let's backtrack and get the Rest Friends to know a little bit more about your wrestling journey so far. So where did your love of wrestling come from? Were you a fan before you decided to pursue it?
Yeah. It was honestly probably, as far as I can remember, the first thing that I really wanted to do with my life. I got my love from watching wrestling, from watching it with my dad growing up. As far as I can remember, we never missed a Monday Night Raw or Monday Night Nitro. We were channel flippers. We liked wrestlers on both sides. Yeah, that was earliest memories, was just watching wrestling with him. There's only like one. I know some people will have they have specific matches that they watch and oh yeah, that's what the one, my earliest wrestling memory that I can really vividly remember was the segment during the Invasion angle when Stone Cold comes back and then he's just whipping everybody whenever Vince McMahon's trying to get him to join WWF because he's just not the same old Stone Cold. He tried to get him to give him a stunner earlier in the night and he wouldn't. So whenever he finally comes back and he's just giving everyone stunners and the show ends with WWF standing tall in the middle of the ring. That's probably one of the coolest and earliest memories that I have of watching wrestling on TV.
So you've said before that wrestling was kind of like a hobby because you were doing football before, right?
Yes, yeah.
So where does the wrestling as a hobby come in? Because I know wrestling is not the number one hobby choice of a lot of people. So talk to us about that.
So I went to college and played football, and I Probably, actually, I definitely should have handled my own recruiting as far as all of that stuff goes.
Yeah.
But I let my head coach do it, and then I went to a school. It was a good school, but it was honestly not the best fit for me. And so I ended up leaving, going to community college because I let my grades slip because I'm 18. I'm like off by myself for the first time. So like I'm not going to class, and I'm enjoying being in college way too much. So I let my grades slip. And so the plan was to go to community college, get my grades back up, go to another school, and finish out playing football. Because in my head, I was actively trying to play football professionally. I don't know, like, if I would have, but, like, that was, like, goal number one. So whenever I went to community college, I was getting my grades up, and I was getting ready to transfer to go to another school. But then some wonky stuff with, like, the financial aid stuff happened. I had apparently received a grant that I wasn't supposed to get, and then they were like, "Hey, we need this money back." I'm like, "The money's gone. I already spent it." So then that kept me from transferring to the school that I had already committed to going to. So then I just had to drop out of college and start like working. But at that point in time, I'd started. I was coaching football at my hometown for the high school and middle school team, and then I was like, "Well, I'm not playing football anymore, and I don't see me starting to playing football anymore." So I figured I would try to figure out if I could wrestle, just because like I needed some sort of like physical outlet to be doing something. Because like I was still going to the gym and working out and stuff, but I was like, I need this to have some sort of purpose for me to do it. And then a buddy of mine that I graduated high school with, rephrase that. I hit him up about like getting started or whatever. And he told me to come with him, meet people at the show, see if like we can get like stuff going or whatever. And I got started at this little indie fed in Eastern Kentucky called Bluegrass Championship Wrestling. They ran shows once a month. I didn't have to pay for training. So I started, I just got trained by the guys that was like just in their locker room initially. So after about 6 training sessions, I ended up having my first match, and I should not have had my first match, but it was something. I mean, I have definitely helped train some kids after me that their first matches were way better than mine were. So, yeah, it was not good, but it was a fun experience. And it was just one of those things, like, I didn't know, like, if I could – I didn't know the path of making professional wrestling career. So at that point in time, whenever I first started, I was like, it would be a good hobby, especially at that point in time, I was only wrestling once, maybe twice a month. So it's not like I was, like, doing it 4 or 5 times a week. And then be like, no, I'm just going to just partially kind of do this. So – because all those other guys that was like in the locker room with me at that place, they were like the weekend warriors or the 40 milers as we call them. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because that's what I wanted to be whenever I first started in wrestling, was just doing that. But then, we see where it's went to from then.
So the first match that I saw you in was at Black Label Pro at Tyler's Day Off in Indiana, and you took a hit that did not look good at all, and you actually started to bleed a little bit. What goes through your mind when you start bleeding during a match?
So at that point in time, my forehead hit the one of the hooks on the turnbuckle, and as soon as I hit I immediately knew. I was like, "Yep, I'm bleeding." Because sometimes, like, you just know,
Mhm.
like it's instant. I was I was in Chicago for those that weekend of all the GCW shows and stuff, and I saw Billy Starks wrestling Brogan during the GCW Settlement Series. He catches her and then he throws her into the ring post, and I immediately knew. I was like, oh, like you can usually tell by the sound. Like if it's more of like a thud, you're like, oh no. Because sometimes, like whenever we get thrown into them, we'll like kind of smack the post, and so it makes like a different sound. But if it's more like thudding, you're like, oh, okay, that one actually got him. Because like as soon as she hit, I immediately knew that she was gonna get up and have blood all over her face.
Oh, geez. That's insane. Like, so you said that sometimes you know exactly, like, oh man, I'm bleeding. Are there other times where you're going through a match and you're just like, what? When did this happen?
Yeah, sometimes I have had it different times, like getting small little. I've had different like scrapes on like my forehead before, just from random stuff, and it's like, oh, like I'm not bleeding a lot, but I am bleeding. Like different ones. I've had like cuts on my leg before. Just wrestling's very physical, so like sometimes it just happens. It's like I'll wake up the next day and I'll have like a bruise or something to be hurting, and I have no idea why or how. Like I don't remember doing anything particular to like that body part for it to be hurting, but for whatever reason it does. So sometimes just with all the adrenaline, stuff just happens and we don't even realize it.
So, with all of the wrestling that you've done so far, Crash, who do you think has been your greatest opponent?
My greatest opponent. That's a tough one. Shoot, that's a super tough one. If circumstances hadn't changed, I would have said Killer Cross, carrying Cross, but then he ended up going back to WWE, so that match ended up not happening. I would definitely have to say Big Damo is one of them. I have a match coming up in a couple weeks for the Wrestling Revolver against Steve Macklin, Mance Warner, and Steve Manders. So that's definitely going to be tough, especially because I don't think, from my recollection, me and Manser have never shared the ring before, and it's been probably a few years since me and Manders have wrestled each other. So that's going to be very fun and interesting to see how that one goes. Joshua Bishop, he's a very tough opponent, which that was like the first match of mine that you saw.
Mm-hmm.
It's a deeper list than what you think it would be, like whenever you're asked this question, whenever you actually get to like thinking about it. I'm just gonna go with those because if I sit here long enough, I'll just think of more and we'll be here all day. So I'm gonna go with those right off the top right now.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you have that many opponents that you're like, oh my God, that everyone is so great. And the chemistry has to work in the ring between the both of you in order to have good matches. So that says a lot about who you think has been your greatest opponent too. So I can't wait for that match that you have upcoming, because I think it's going to be amazing. Definitely, probably for the highlight reel.
Yeah, definitely for sure. It's going to be chaotic. That's one way to describe it.
So wrestling isn't just physical. I think that there's a mental aspect to it too. Like, you not only have to train your body, but you also have to train your brain. So can you talk a little bit about maybe like what it takes to like psych yourself up, or what that connection is in order for you to wrestle?
For me, I treat it just like excuse me. I treat it just like how I would treat going out on the field for a game when I was playing football. You gotta just find like this like space like in your mind that you can just kind of empty everything out, because at that point in time, for the next however long you're wrestling, in football for the next 48 minutes that you were playing or 60 minutes. Like nothing else matters. No, like you're mad at your girlfriend, you got homework, you're failing a class, whatever. Like nothing matters. So you have to be able to find like that like mental space in your head to be able to like forget everything else outside of this, because we wrestle to help like the fans forget like about their kind of bullshit that they have going on in their lives or whatever, even if it's only for a couple hours at a time. We're also doing the same thing for the 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes we're out there in the ring. We're out there performing for all the fans, and we're trying to forget about our bullshit outside of the ring too, because we do not want to let whatever we have going on outside to filter its way in and then start affecting us and affecting our performances. So you have to find that place and just wash it all away and forget about it.
That's a great way of putting it. And I think you were already kind of trained like that because of football, because when you do play another sport, like you physically have to, or like mentally have to be in that space of like, okay, this is what I have to do. And I might take this hit, who knows? But I have to be prepared just in case I do.
Exactly. And whenever I was playing football, until I went to college, I played running back and linebacker. So half my job was hitting people. So I had to be in just a whole nother like state of focus, because every play I'm hitting someone. There's not a play that goes by where I don't get in some sort of contact.
What's worse for you, getting hit or hitting in football?
Honestly, whenever I played running back, I like to run people over. So I use that truck stick often. So I definitely didn't shy away from contact, especially like at the beginning of the game. The first hit of the game, it's like dumping your head in ice cold water. It just wakes you up. I don't know what it is. I mean, getting hit sucks, but I always tried to be the one that was initiating the contact.
So I want to know about advice. So what is the worst piece of advice that you've heard in the industry, that you've received yourself, that you're like, this is just garbage, like tragic?
The worst. The worst piece of advice that I got was from some older guys. They had told me that going to the Ring of Honor tryout camp seminar thing that they were doing yearly for a while, that it was a waste of time. They're only gonna take my money, and that they're only gonna tell me stuff that I already know.
Wow.
That was like the worst piece of advice I got, but in that it was completely wrong. And I knew that immediately as soon as they told me, but still, like, I knew that was like garbage, because like I'm going to this thing that has former Ring of Honor world champions teaching me and trying to help me and stuff like that. I was like, I know, like, I'm going to be learning some stuff that I have never heard before.
Did you tell them in that moment, like, that's not good advice? Or were you just like, zip it
no,
and
it
move
was,
on?
No, it's one of those things that like in wrestling, we're taught to just take everything in, even if some people might mean well by it, some people may not. Just take it in, nod, okay, thanks, and then just move on. You don't have to necessarily like take that advice that they give you, especially if you know in your heart of hearts that it's not good advice. Especially at that point in time, I was only like 2 years in. I still didn't really know much about like the business, and like I knew etiquette, and I knew like, well, I'm not gonna like dismiss them, but okay, man, well, I'll take that in consideration. I mean, I'm still gonna go, but you know, I'm not gonna not go because I already spent the money on paying for everything. So yeah.
So let's switch it around from bad advice to good advice. What has been some like really, really great advice that you've received?
So one piece of advice that I got that was really good is to see how do they phrase it? Don't fake you can't fake the funk, if that makes any sense. So don't whenever it comes to your wrestling character or something like that, it's really hard to try not to put yourself out there as something that you can't back up. There was a trainee at the old school here in Ohio. This was before I came up here, but it was kind of more like a cautionary tale about not faking stuff like that, because it's very easily, especially nowadays, to fact check stuff. Someone was they were claiming to be from the Commonwealth of Boston or something like that, and they didn't really have a Boston accent for one. And then someone was at a show, and I was asking them questions about living or being from Boston or whatever, because that person, the fan, was from Boston. And so they're what street did you grow up on? Oh, I grew up on this street, blah, 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 whatever. And they're like, well, you live near whatever monument or something. Oh yeah. And then it was just a whole mess, but just because their story and their whole character identity was just falling into itself, because they didn't know, they weren't able to keep up with the person that was actually from there.
That's tragic.
Which I was guilty of this before. Whenever I first started, I wanted to say that I was from Gainesville, Florida, but like Gaines, lift weights, Gaines. But I didn't have I didn't sound like I was from Florida. I definitely sounded like I was from Eastern Kentucky. So that was a little bit of a cautionary tale. Just don't fake it. don't fake stuff that can easily be fact checked.
Okay, but I see what you were trying to do with the Gainesville. I think that's good. But who's gonna fact check that you're from Florida?
No one really questioned it, just because of how I played it off. But still.
All right, Crash, let's get into our 10 out of 10 segment, which we're going to play a game, and I'm going to give you some scenarios, and you tell me if they are 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 being amazing, or anywhere else on the scale, 0 being the absolute worst experience or scenario.
Right.
All righty. First scenario, taking your first bump in the ring.
It was definitely a 0 out of 10, just because of how much it hurt. Because you're not callous to it yet, so you're not used to that feeling of falling backwards in the middle of the ring. It was definitely a 0 out of 10. Now it's whatever, but then the very first time it sucked. It was a 0 out of 10 for sure.
Being trained by one trainer who has the name Sammy Callahan.
10 out of 10 for sure.
10. Perfect. Okay.
It's you'll sweat, you'll work your ass off for it. But as long as if you bust your ass for him, he'll bust his ass for you. So that's huge. So 10 out of 10 for sure.
Bleeding during a match.
I'm gonna say a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Because it really just depends on is it are you doing a death match? Is it was it accidental? Did it accidentally happen? Did you mean for it to happen? Is it a blow off for a big angle that you're in? There's kind of levels to it, so it really depends. Because I know some people just be bleeding just to be bleeding. Sometimes or at least that's that's a little bit of a stereotype anyway. But definitely, I would say 7 out of 10. If it's a blood feud or something like that, a big intense angle between two people, and you end up getting some color whenever it happens, it definitely can add to the intensity and the drama and the story of what's going on.
Okay. Having people boo you in the ring.
Well, if I'm being the bad guy, then a 10 out of 10. But if I'm supposed to be the good guy, then a 0 out of 10.
Meeting fans after a show.
10 out of 10.
Having to sell your own merch at merch tables.
So sometimes it's a 0 out of 10.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a 10 out of 10. Just because if you're selling, when I'm selling my own merch, if I am selling, like if people are actively buying or at least like coming up and saying hello, that's great. But if like no one's acknowledging me while I'm standing there behind the table, because it happens sometimes. So that's a 0 out of 10 for sure. If like no one is coming up and buying anything, or at least like acknowledging that you were there. Yeah. But that kind of happens to me sometimes because I have like I get that Clark Kent effect whenever I'm not in my wrestling gear. And like I don't do anything different to like my face or anything, but like whenever I put like on a shirt or something, I'm not in my gear. I guess I don't look like myself.
So yours is not the glasses effect. It's with the sweater that people don't recognize.
Yeah,
you.
like if I put on a hoodie or a t-shirt or something on, then like no one recognizes me without like I guess I have to just go to the merch table just without a shirt on so people can realize that it's me.
Alrighty, and the last one, winning your first match.
10 out of 10 for sure. It's no other feeling like winning your first match. You remember it always.
So Crash, thank you so much again for joining me. I 1,000% appreciate it. You have been wonderful. So let our Rest Friends know where they can follow you and what you have coming up.
Well, once again, thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate it. It's a good time talking as always. So you guys can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I guess Twitch. I'm not as active on my Twitch channel anymore, or at least like currently kind of take a little hiatus on that. But you all can follow me on all those other social media platforms at the Crash Jaxon. That's Jaxon. For those of you who misunderstand through my accent. And coming up this weekend, actually, I have For Us Wrestling in Michigan on Friday. I'm at Black Label Pro on Saturday, and I am making my Glory Pro debut this Sunday in Missouri. And then after that, November the 5th, I'm at War Wrestling in Lima, Ohio. And then on November the 12th, I have Wrestling Revolver here in Dayton. Like I mentioned before, I have a fatal four-way match against Steve Manders, good old Manser, Steve Macklin, and myself. And just it's going to be a chaotic mess.
Well, we all look forward to it. So yes, Rest Friends, you heard it's Crash Jaxon with an X, okay? Because a lot of people misspell it and it irritates me. And I'm like, come on. And you correct people too on social media, which is good.
Yeah. It's like what makes it like even more annoying is that people they'll tag me and stuff and then still spell it wrong. It's like it's right there.
It's in the handle, people. Come on.
It's in the handle.
All right, Crash. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. You as well.